It's Ness. And you know what else it is? It's episode 332 of the Platformers Podcast, a show about games and nerd culture. And I am your host with the most delicious cocktail of the evening, Brian Barnett.
I am a wretched hive of scum and villainy, Kris.
I'm the host with the most coughing issues, Lucas White.
I think
Debatable.
you mean to say I'm Lucas the Throat Goat White.
Absolutely not the throat goat this week.
But last week you were, which is why the coughing issue now,
Yeah.
Oh,
that's not
okay.
good.
Absolutely. You know, oh
Oh,
man, that
nice.
reminds me of the Curb episode where Larry got like a hair stuck in his throat afterwards. Oh, so good. So good.
Yeah, my family's been sick for at least 2 weeks, and I was doing great at avoiding it till this week.
Nice.
Right as you needed it the most.
Yeah. We got a lot of stuff to talk about.
There we go.
Where do we want to start? Because we do have a lot of stuff. And slowly through the show, if you're watching the stream, you're going to see me kind of nibble on some of these Thanksgiving leftovers. So don't let that make you too jealous, listeners.
If you're an American listener, you probably have plenty of leftovers yourself, as
So many
everyone
leftovers.
seems to tell me. Yeah.
So one of my things, the embargo just lifted today, so we could start there if you want, like the most recent.
Let's
Sure.
do that. Hot off the presses.
All right. I don't have a review for it yet because of said holidays and whatnot. But I've been playing Infinity Nikki. A game.
I've seen this name thrown around a lot, and I have barely any idea what it is. So.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, I think people in the kind of traditional gaming spaces didn't really hear about it much. But it's one of those things where it's that. But then also, like, it got 30 million something pre-registers. So there's like a whole big quiet audience for it. I first heard about it. I think it's been showing up on a lot of like PlayStation showcases. Could have showed up for the first time at the Game Awards. My memory's a little fuzzy.
Can't recall specifics.
Yeah. So basically it is the latest in a series of like mobile like gacha-y dress up games. I think like the big one's called Shining Nikki. But like the thing here is it's like it takes that, but it's like a big flashy open world platformy action-y sort of game plus the dress up stuff. Yeah, so it's got this like really distinct sort of like presence to it. Because so many games now, especially in like that gacha space, are like the Genshin Impact kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like that. So it's like borrowing heavily from like, you know, Breath of the Wild, Sonic Frontiers kind of thing. But instead of being about like combat and powers and anime characters and stuff, it's like quirky kind of, I don't know, very like unaggressively feminine kind of thing. I'm trying so hard just not say the word cozy because I'm sick of that.
It is
that's kind of where
it
this
is becoming a
operating.
ubiquitous label, yeah, but fair.
Yeah, but basically it's like you're this pink-haired girl who has powers that kind of come off of her like clothing, like her outfits and stuff. And it's like platformy stuff. So it's like here's the double jump power, and here's the one that lets you like fight enemies. Then there's like bug catching and like grooming animals and fishing, like all the stuff you would expect in a game like this. But it's like tied to like whatever her outfit is, and it's really like just on the nose about it, like very unapologetic. Like when you go to double jump, her whole ensemble just changes without any, you know, there's no cutscene or anything. It's just like she blinks into a different outfit. It's very silly.
Right.
And just like the production values are through the roof, despite it being like a free to play kind of thing.
So definitely going for the gacha, or the Genshin market rather.
Oh, 100%. Like if you look at the UI, it's like 100%. This is what Genshin Impact looks like. For better and for worse. I find a lot of those UIs in these games, like even when I'm like having fun tinkering around with a mobile game, or whatever, it's just the menus are so just impossible to digest when you're just like looking at them.
They tend to be very dense and like loaded with systems. Just,
Yeah.
multiple different ways to get power and upgrades and everything. And boy, are they convoluted and linked together, all for the sake of getting your number to go up.
Pretty much. Like I always find myself just kind of like, all right, I did some stuff, and I'm going to open the menu and just follow the red dots that tell me there's something new to click on. But I guess like this game's been getting a lot of attention. I think because there just aren't. Well, it's almost like games for kids where they've kind of disappeared from like the mass market in a way.
Right.
Like they're not like capital V video games anymore. They're all like mobile games or apps you subscribe to or whatever. Same thing with like a lot of these like kind of I keep saying dress up games, but there's probably a better way to put it. But that kind of thing. And you see them popping up every now and then, like Style Stavvy from Nintendo, and whoever else, like Marvelous maybe. You've got like
This sounds like Marvelous, but yeah, I don't know for sure.
There's one on Roblox that's a big deal. So like these kinds of games have big audiences, but again, all that stuff feels relegated to mobile. But here's this: it is also on mobile, but it's also on consoles, and it's getting that sort of like blockbustery treatment, like a Genshin kind of game.
Gotcha.
And it's just very unapologetically weird and goofy. There's like it's very like nature oriented, like an Animal Crossing. So you're catching bugs and fishing and stuff, but it's all built around like crafting like parts of your outfit, and it's very silly in that like there's fish that are like shaped like purses. There's like animals, you groom animals to get like feathers or wool or whatever, and like the dogs have like braids down their backs. It's just like everything in this world is just super fashionable organically. It's very silly. And then like just the gameplay feels really good. There is a lot of platforming. Running around and jumping on things feels good. There's lots of like I mentioned Sonic Frontiers earlier, and that's actually really apt because there's like just like floating trampolines. There's like birds holding these nets, and they're floating in place like Disney characters, and you jump on that, and it boosts you up. And then there's like really dense lore, like it explains why those bird holding trampoline booster things are there. Like you find books, and it's like I feel like some people look at it and be like, "Oh, this is a game for children." But then they go into it, and it's got like tons of systems, and it's very RPG like, and there's lots of reading and lore, and it's just it just feels very distinct. And it's one of those games where you can tell that it's probably going to be a big deal, and it's probably going to have tons of people spending money on it because it is gacha.
That was going to be my next question. How does that factor into it?
Yeah, so it feels very much designed to be like a single player game that you can just play. There's not really multiplayer that I can tell. Like you can have friends, but it very much feels like a single player game. But you're like the clothing stuff is like there's outfits you unlock that have abilities that get you through the story. But then there's like all kinds of other stuff you can find too that like it pushes like the crafting and stuff. It's like, oh, I found a blueprint for this dress that looks really cool, so it needs me to get X, Y, and Z. So I'm gonna go and like find the animals or the whatever random pickups. But then the gacha is also like, here's all these other outfit items that you can pull for, kind of divorced of everything. And there are points where you can challenge people to like style battles, and it'll be like, we want you to do this style, and then it drills down and it's like, what that actually means is you press the filter button and you pick this, and that's what that means. And then each thing has like a point value. So probably like when you do the gacha, when you get like the 5-star things, they're probably worth more points. And so they make those style battles easier. But then there's also like another system where you can just dump resources into the stuff you do have to make it stronger anyway. So that's kind of the trade-off, I guess. So it seems very like very much about like player expression in that way. So it's like, oh, I have these items, which makes me feel very special because they're expensive and 5 stars, and I blew a lot of money to get them. And maybe there's some element of like PvP style battling or something off in the distance. I'm not sure. But just from what I've played, it seemed easy enough to use the stuff I had kind of picked out to like win those. And maybe not immediately get like there's like ratings. So it's like there's 5 different rewards, and the more points you get, so that feels kind of.
You might have to work for
standard.
it, or you might just toss some money at it. But yeah. But that's not like there's whole characters or systems or whatever that are locked behind it, because it's all just Nikki, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're that character, and that doesn't change. Like there's barely any combat, and when there is combat, it's like you press a button and she shoots a little like fireball kind of thing, and it's basically like it's a different way to get resources because you hit the enemies and they spit out the thing, almost like a atelier kind of situation.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, it's neat. I saw Geo over at Digital Trends was really high on it.
It seems like a couple of people are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a Eurogamer review. I think they gave it 4 out of 5. They were pretty happy about it.
And it's kind of like that thing where it's like, this just stands out. It feels unique, even though it's not like super unique. It still like feels such. And it just lots of polish, lots of production values. There's really cool set pieces. Like there's this part where you're in this library that holds like people's dreams or wishes or something like that. And you get on this giant paper crane, and it just kind of like flies you around, and this like vocal song kicks on, and you're not really doing anything. You're just kind of watching the camera swoop around while you stand there, but it's really visually impressive. So yeah,
care and attention was put into it, which is a rarity in that space typically.
Exactly. Yeah. It's almost hard to believe it's free. Even if the free is in quotation marks, it's like it doesn't feel.
They will get their money somehow, some way.
Absolutely.
It'll be off the people who are easily exploited, as is tradition, but
yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I've been playing an early build. The game's not out until the 5th. And it does that thing where it's like it just sort of, here's a giant stack of cash that you can use if you want to play with the thingy. And I didn't really like, I did it a couple times just to see how it worked, but otherwise it never really like drew attention to that part. I think the Wizardry game I was talking about a few weeks ago was similar, where it's like it's got these systems, but it doesn't really bug you about them.
It doesn't insist upon them.
Yeah. A lot of games will just be like pelting you.
Yeah, at some point in the tutorial, it will point you towards it and force you to do a pull, and it's like, doesn't that feel good? And look at this cool thing you get.
Yeah, and then it'll find ways to bring it back up or put it in your face constantly. Whereas that game,
it's
and
a problem I had
this
with
game,
Honkai Star Rail as well. It's just, it feels cater made to sell you stuff, even if there's some good stuff underneath. It's
exactly. It's always like, look, this is here, this is here, this is here.
Yeah.
Here, it doesn't seem, at least the amount of time I put into it, doesn't seem that way. The one like annoying thing I ran into, despite it is kind of like buggy and unstable. like it's a really, really big, hefty game, system requirements wise too. So it's like unstable. But there was a couple points where it's like the main story will stop and it'll be like, you have to get to this rank in one of these progression systems to move on. And that's tied to like daily quests.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, I'm 100 doohickeys short of progressing here. So I guess I can't like move any further until tomorrow.
Yeah. I always hate
so
that
seems
stuff.
to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, time gating sucks.
Yeah.
I even think,
Especially
I think
when
level
it's
gating
like-
is also like really stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me challenge it. I may lose. That's on me. I'll go back.
Yeah. Especially for me, where it's like, oh, this game came out during a holiday situation, very close to its release date. It's like, well, I'm not gonna have a review up in time. Sorry, folks. And you know, the people who did, shout out to them, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting. I don't know if it's like the kind of game I would go out of my way to play. But it was also one that like it wasn't like, oh, the opportunity came up to get paid money to play it. I did kind of like put some energy into seeking it out, just because it looks so interesting compared to like everything else that's out.
It does look very pretty. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's probably enough for now. That's Infinity Nikki. It is going to be free to play. It's on PC and PlayStation 5 and mobile. So I think the whole cozy game thing has really come to a point of being very annoying. I understand the appeal, and I certainly do like story of seasons and things like that. But it has kind of gotten old for me, just in terms of like every game that isn't about combat have to be this. But for a game that kind of exists in that space, I think it's trying to do things a little differently. And it's neat.
Neat.
Yeah, like capital N, neat.
Infinity Needy.
Needy, sure.
Cool.
Needy for your time because it's a service game and it wants you to come back to it constantly until
put an asterisk on everything that was just discussed because the prices might be egregious, the time gating might be stupid. Who knows? We won't know until the actual thing goes live.
Yeah. You never know what sort of a thing they'll just decide to switch on at the end.
Because... Yeah, I learned to stop spending money on these games after Dragalia lost.
Yep.
And I've done a very good job at not being tempted or anything.
Dragalia lost your money.
Yep, Dragalia broke my heart. But I know that while I'm pretty good at like having fun with games like this and ignoring that stuff, I have no what's the word? I know exactly why that stuff is a problem and that stuff is present. So
yeah, we might be able to avoid it, but it exploits somebody somewhere.
Yeah. I am in no way trying to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. Plus, it just, like, this is the point I always bring up when any kind of gacha or whatever is discussed. It does not benefit the game at all. There is no improvement made to the game by its inclusion. It is just there to get your money.
Yeah.
You know, that's it.
And it makes like some of the genuine creativity in these games you do run into feel very like backhanded.
Yeah.
In some ways.
It's a shame.
Like, man, I wish I could just like
fully
be on board with loving this game.
Yeah.
Like Dragalia lost. I loved that game. But then it was always like, and then there's this part. And then it got shut down.
And it's going forever. Yeah.
Yep.
This is again why I, nod to all the Grand Blue games that aren't Grand Blue itself, because, yeah. Grand Blue Fantasy, the gacha is fine, but it's still a gacha. And,
Rising is great.
But yeah, they've taken all their gacha money and made real games with them. So it's like, cool, good, do that. But just, I wish you didn't exploit people to get to that point. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So it goes.
'Tis a shame.
so it goes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
What do you got for us then, Brian?
let's stroll a little ways down memory lane to a time when the duty was calling to you and you were forced, compelled to answer. That time has come yet again, my friends. And I'm happy to say it.
The shoot bang.
Because I've been playing
Medal
Call
of
of Duty Black Ops 6. I know it's shocking. It's shocking. And I've been playing it with some of our friends. We've been doing like multiplayer nights. And let me tell you, this game is real good, guys. It is.
Call of Duty is one of the industry's biggest punching bags, but like it keeps selling and it keeps doing all right. And the core of it is still a very good shoot bang. So
yes.
I've been seeing a lot of media people playing this one still.
Yeah, this one seems to be on the upper echelons.
Yes. So, and I'll give you some reasons why that is the case. So I have been focused on multiplayer so far. I've only done like the first part of the first campaign mission. Just because people were like, hey, let's do multiplayer. And I was like, sure, let's do multiplayer. And then I got completely enthralled by the multiplayer, which is great because it's been a long time since first person shooter has really grabbed me in a powerful way. I was never a Call of Duty multiplayer guy. My big multiplayer shooters were like Halo 3. I played for hundreds of hours, like many hundreds of hours with my friends in college. That was a huge one for me. I, by myself, played a lot of Halo 4 online, which I know is like unpopular, but I loved like Infinity mode where you could just like call in guns and stuff. I thought that shit was hype. And the guns in 4 are good. And then I played some Halo 5 multiplayer, but I really didn't like how they leaned into, speaking of like pay to win mechanics, it wasn't called Warzone, I don't think, in Halo 5, but the one where you like would get the cards, you could like buy the cards for like the Scorpion tank or something like that, and it would just be this huge big battle thing, and it was like, all right, well, if your thing got blown up, like you can't get a new one unless you've got some of these cards, and it's just sucked. I played a lot of Halo Infinite, but then I also, during the PS3 era, I got hugely into playing Killzone 3 multiplayer, which that game was mad fun. But apart from that, and like way back in the day when I was playing like Unreal Tournament and when I was part of a clan for Counter-Strike in high school, like I didn't really play online or like Quake 3 and stuff like that. I haven't really gotten into a lot of modern ones.
You grew up on the arena shooter.
Yeah. The quick, fast paced, all that sort of stuff.
Shout out to Unreal Tournament 2K4. I miss it.
Yeah.
That was a good game.
Yeah. So I think the last time that I even played one of these games online was Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Which I was working on, for the wiki team at IGN. But this one feels fantastic, and I'll tell you why. They made one simple change, which I believe I talked about back when I did the like a preview for it in the like early access kind of period, or not early access, the like closed beta, I think. But it's omnidirectional sprinting. Like you hit sprint, and typically in games like this, you'll click into the left stick if you're playing on controller, and you will sprint. But if you turn, you will keep sprinting. But if you start moving your stick in a different direction to like like side strafe or walk or go backwards, you stop sprinting and you start just walking. Not the case in Black Ops 6. Once you start sprinting, it doesn't matter what direction you are running, you're going to keep sprinting. So you can sprint backwards, you can sprint sideways, and you can like slide sideways. You can do like a Max Payne like, you know, diving thing where you can shoot what is it, like Nick Frost's character in Hot Fuzz. You can fire both of your guns whilst jumping through the air.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
you ever fired a gun whilst jumping in the air? You ever fired 2 guns whilst jumping through the air?
You ever had a moment where you shoot your gun at the air and say, "Ah"?
No, I've not ever shot my gun in the air and said, "Ah." Missing out. Shame.
Brilliant movie.
God, what a great movie.
Seriously, one of my favorites of all time.
Diggs BTW7 in the chat says, "Hey, what's up?" Hey, what's up to yourself, Diggs? Thanks for joining us. Yeah, that one change makes the movement so much more fluid. It makes it so much easier to like juke away from fire. It is still shocking to me how low the TTK is in this game. Like from the time somebody sees you to the time you are dead is like almost instantaneous, which is just very weird as somebody who like played most of my online competitive shooter time playing Halo, which has a very low time to kill. But yeah, it is so much fun. So I was playing with Justin the other night and Scott, friends of the podcast. I think both of them have been on. I don't remember if Scott's been on the show. I feel like he has.
I've been on his podcast, so that counts.
Professor RPG himself.
Indeed. And so we were playing, and I was like, I don't really know what weapons I'm going to go for. And then I got to the level where I unlocked a like preview loadout where it was straight up shoddy sniper. Like you start with the sniper rifle, and then your second weapon is just an incredible shotgun. And I was like, oh, and I went on like a killing spree. I went on like a rampage, and I was like, this is what I'm building towards. I know. I see it. I see the goal. This is what I'm gonna go do. And so we've just been playing some of that. It's fantastic. The maps are pretty good. I still haven't come up on the map that I played in the preview, which I really, really liked, which was like a train yard where you were just running up and down this like train yard, and you could duck into like the rail cars and then like jump back out. Really, really cool level. Very long, and you can just throw grenades from one side of the map to the other. Super, super fun. But one thing, and I don't know if this was a thing in the previous multiplayer suites for Call of Duty, but there's this awesome game type that we just randomly happened into, which was like prop something.
Prop hunt.
Prop hunt is so awesome. I don't know, Kris, do you know what this is?
Games. Yeah, So this started in, I want to say it was Team Fortress 2 that started it.
Oh, was it really?
Like maps and servers that had that. And and it's just gone from there. So
I have I've legitimately never seen it before. It is so sick. Like we were playing this. So for people who don't know what this is, who were like me until very recently, completely ignorant of this, one team just has regular weapons and is regular humans, and the other team spawns with like a minute or 30 seconds or something on the clock. And they spawn in, and their character models are just different parts of the environment.
Clutter objects,
just
debris.
Different rubbish that will decorate the level. So when I first popped in, I was on the hiding team, and I was just a small rolling suitcase. And I was like, this is incredible. And so like there's an office in the level where they spawned us, and so I was just like, all right, I'm just going to sit over here, like in the corner next to like some seating, like some bench or something. Like you can be medium-sized items. You can be large-sized items. I eventually became like a giant box covered in like a tarp and like bungee cords wrapped around it. It was enormous. And so I was just like, I went down like to the docks by the ocean and just like kind of sat there next to like a dirty wall and a lot of people ran past me and had no idea. And and then somebody just ran up and shot me, and I was like, damn it. When I was spectating after I died, I saw a person that was turned into a giant whiteboard, and they were just standing up in the middle of this parking lot, like standing behind this van and like sidling around the van when somebody would come around to look. And they just kept like pillar humping this van to like not be seen. And then they went around to the other side, and then they just booked it down the road. So you just see this giant, like 5 foot across whiteboard that's like 4 feet tall, just like maneuvering down the level. If you see it, it's over. But it's really fantastic.
And the objective for the props is simply just to survive the timer. So
stay hidden, don't get discovered. Yeah. So it's so fun, like just ridiculous fun. There's a really good spread of weapons. They all feel good. There's like your M4 stand-in, your MP5 stand-in. There's like a saw, which I really enjoyed. Sniper rifle feels good. Like, Call of Duty, one of the big turnoffs that I had early on, like in the 360 generation and stuff like that, was that just Call of Duty didn't look as good as the other shooters that I was going to play. And so that's why I went in this other direction. But I got to tell you, these games feel fantastic. And I mean, this game looks great as well. So I'm excited to dig into the campaign, which now that I'm done with like the Black Friday, Cyber Monday stuff that I was working on, now I actually have time to go back to it and like play through the campaign. I'm really excited because there's a lot of people whose shooter credentials I think are unimpeachable have been saying a lot of positive stuff about the campaign. And so I'm really excited to get to it. As somebody who, I played Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, I played Vanguard, I played, some other ones of the recent Call of Duties to work on guides for them. Whether that was writing like the main story walkthrough or doing, collectible locations and things like this. I've had fun in all of these recent ones, even though I know like a lot of people didn't like Vanguard. So I'm excited to see, since I enjoyed the ones that people typically don't like, how much more am I going to like this one when people are really into it. So really excited about that. That should be a good time.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Kris, what you got?
Let me see. So in the vein of shooters, we mentioned last week about how the Dark Forces remaster came out this year. Mm-hmm. So I decided I would pick that up, and I did, and it's great. It is like just touched up game, but the game itself is a first-person shooter from a time when we still called them Doom clones.
Yeah.
And this feels like a Doom clone because it's a Doom clone in terms of like, labyrinthine maps, digging up keys and such. It just happens to have a Star Wars skin. And yeah. So all the weapons and such, all the enemies, just Star Wars stuff. But it's good. It's still holds up pretty well, despite the age. Night Dive is always on top of things, in terms of like upping the visuals and still keeping the feel and general vibe of it all intact. And yeah. So I did that, but as a result,
do the like little like cutscenes still have that kind of granulated kind of feel to them?
Not so much. They did okay, so the movement and animations and such are still pretty much the same. They're just like higher fidelity, new artwork and such like that, but it's still
Is it like the Minecraft with God rays and ray tracing and stuff like that?
Not anything near that. It's still like it still looks like something that could have come out in the 90s, just just a lot less like filters and compression and everything like that.
Gotcha.
But the audio is still vaguely compressed, and it still has just awkward pauses and such in the delivery because it was the early days. They didn't really have that shit on lock. So it's really, at this point, it's just kind of charming to look at. But yeah,
that's cool.
But it's still very much a product of its time. And so I don't know if anyone who didn't grow up with that kind of shooter would appreciate it now. And like there's certainly like a lot of level design places where it's just like, oh man, this is friggin' a slog. But it's still fun. The core of it is still good fun.
Nice.
Night Dive does really, really good work.
They really do.
Yeah, I haven't played any of like the stuff they put out that's like actually has a good reputation. I played Turok 3 and then Killing Time, which they just put out recently. Both of those games aren't very good.
But Night Dive will do them all the same.
Yeah, so it's just really cool in terms of like just making those games playable with like new mechanics, within reason, and just on their compatibility, but also just the way they kind of compile and present the extras. Like we found like old assets on like CDs we found that were sent to like random, industry events 20 years ago, and we
Here you go. It's in the
or
extra menu.
yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, I dig it.
Yeah, I really respect their work, especially because the entire studio came about because they're just like, we really love System Shock 2. We can't play System Shock 2. We're going to, form this little company. It's like husband and wife combination, and go figure out how we can get System Shock 2 put back on, find the rights to it, put it back up there. And they did. System Shock 2 is now available on GOG and everything.
That's
and
great.
Then they went from there, and then they did the remake of the original System Shock, and have just been continuing to do remasters all throughout. So they do solid work. It's great for, software preservation and such like that. And it's just good to see people who, grew up in the same time frame as I did and just going, I like that. Let's bring that forward so other people can experience it and keep it going.
That's how it needs to be.
Yeah, especially for like shooters from the 90s, because you didn't really have a lot of that before these guys showed up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like everyone knew Doom, obviously, but no one knew everything else that was made in the build engine unless you were like, a sicko like yours truly or whatever. So you didn't see your Hexens, your Heretics, your all the others, your Bloods, but they're cool games in their own way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I need to check those out because I didn't play Hexen or Heretic either.
I had I had those on a shareware disc, which had a whole bunch of different shareware episodes. So I had like the first part of it.
Nice.
Because that was a lot of how games were, passed around in those days. It's like instead of a demo, you get like, here is the first chunk of the game on a shareware disc with a bunch of other games. And if you like that, you can literally send out snail mail to them and order a copy. And they will mail the full game to you.
Hell yeah.
That's great. That's great. Those were the days, man.
Oh, yeah. But the Dark Forces remaster kind of is a segue into the next thing, because I was on a Star Wars kick. And I was also going through a whole bunch of other games from this year particularly in order to just, cycle through as many as I can ahead of Game of the Year talks. And there's still a bunch I'm going through. Obviously, I touched on Dragon's Dogma 2 last time. I only touched a little bit more of that since. But among the other ones I picked up, I thought, what if I get something really fucking mid?
Yeah.
So I've been playing Star Wars Outlaws.
I was gonna say nothing ever good ever comes from I was on a Star Wars kick.
Yeah.
Not in video.
Well, games, I mean, it depends. Like Star Wars video games, like they run the gamut, and
Dark Forces
nowadays
kind of slaps.
Like Dark Forces kind of slaps. All the following, the Jedi Knights and Jedi Academies slap. Your KOTORs, top tier. Your flight sims, like your X-Wings, your TIE Fighters, love that shit.
And you got Yoda stories on the Game Boy cover.
Yeah.
Do you?
Or Jedi Power Battles or shit like that.
Hey, don't you watch your mouth with Jedi Power Battles.
Oh, no.
I'm one of the sickos who enjoyed that shit.
There were decent beat-em-ups in the Star Wars vein. Jedi Power Battles was not one.
No, it was not. It was not.
But we come now to Star Wars Outlaws, which got a reputation, pretty much out the gate for being fairly mid. And at a glance, all of it, it's just like, this is your standard Ubisoft open world game. Because it is made by Ubisoft Division, that being Massive, the guys who did, I've forgotten the name of it.
The Division?
That's the one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was completely blanked on. I was like, starts with D. What is it? Yeah, Division. So yeah, it's made by Massive, and it plays a lot like standard Ubisoft stuff. But I don't know. This one, I was kind of interested in from the get because I'm a Star Wars mark, And as we discussed many, many episodes ago, they made the droid hot somehow.
Okay.
Brian, you may recall that.
I'm not wading into this one just yet.
Okay. So yeah, one of the characters in it is just an old like commando droid, but he happens to wear like a brown duster, and and he's cool. He's actually the best character in it so far. But yeah, it's tricky to talk about because like I'll say how would I describe it? It is more than the sum of its parts, but it wasn't a very big sum to begin with.
Right.
Fair.
So
there's stuff it does really, really well.
Yeah.
But it doesn't
I don't
quite
know.
like...
I don't know if I want to keep pushing through all the way. Like I've got a decent bit of playtime. I think I put like 20 hours in the last week. Like it did grab me to start with, but I'll just double check that actually. Oh god, yeah, 28 hours. So yeah, I played a lot of it. But all of the individual systems in terms of gameplay are not particularly good. Like you get a ship, it has space combat. The space combat is dull. It is very mid, it is very formulaic, and I just try to avoid it as much as I can. Like it doesn't grab or have any
That's not
sauce, which is not what you want to hear from a Star Wars game.
Does not instill me with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, the shooting, not great. Doesn't feel super great, but you're a scoundrel. You're not meant to be, taking on like legions and legions of stormtroopers, which you end up doing anyway, but you kind of, need to play into your combat tricks and stealth and whatever. So you have your stealth systems, and they are fine. They're fine. Just again, you've played any kind of Ubisoft game in the last 20 years, you've played this. So where it excels then is the fact that it feels incredibly Star Wars in terms of the atmosphere, the places you visit, like wandering around the streets and on the different planets, hearing the various, aliens and languages and such going on around you. It feels really, really cool. Like the vibes are very strong and probably among the best there have ever been in terms of like getting on the ground level of just the Star Wars setting. And I mean, honestly, that's what I wanted the most out of it. It's like dig into the Star Wars setting when it isn't like the high end stuff. Because like it's not your Jedis or your big open warfare or anything. Because that's part of the appeal of the Star Wars setting is that it's, multi-layered and multifaceted. You got your big fantastical good and evil stuff at the very top, and then you got your epic space opera, space battles, Empire versus Rebellion and all that. And then you have, the ground level, the smugglers, the troopers, the things like that. And that's always been the appeal is that, these multi-facets all can interact in different ways. But I just like being very, very ground level with it. It just feels like the most interesting base level exploration of what it would be like to live in that setting. And they've done a really great job in that. Like, it's incredibly immersive in that regard. I kind of like the characters so far. Like, the main character starts out very incompetent. She's just, bumblefucks her way into, being in a position where she can potentially do something. But there are signs that she's growing. Like it's almost just laughable. Like everyone would see through her when she's like trying to talk or lie or do anything like that. And it's like, you would not last. You would not make it as far as you have. But there's signs that she's growing, and also just every time a big thing happens, like the plot kind of evolves. There's a moment where she kind of reflects on it and reflects on, what she likes or doesn't like about the overall circumstances, about people backstabbing each other, everyone trying to get ahead for a few credits more, that kind of thing. And yeah, there's genuine moments of heart in it, and some of the characters are pretty neat. Again, I really like ND5, your droid. He's really cool, honestly. And the overall premise of the game is building towards assembling a crew so you can put together a heist. It's going to be a big old heist on, the casino planet from Last Jedi.
We here at the Platformers, big fans of heist.
Absolutely. So I kind of do want to push through and see where that goes and see what the other characters are like. And I have been told like part of the problem is the fact that you, after the first area, you can just branch off and go non-linear. So it's like you have these few objectives and you can go to different planets and such. But as a result, the characters you pick up from one of them will not interact with the other ones because you can't guarantee that you
Right.
have them.
I
So
don't like.
I hate that. I think it would be much better if it was, just more structured and linear. But them's the breaks. And a lot of the open world stuff is just because the systems are so meh. It's like, I don't know. I don't really get that much out of doing it. So you can get like, new upgrades and different pieces of gear which give you slight modifications and such. But by and large, it's just like, you can do them, but I skip a lot of them. I'm just chipping away at main missions and bigger moment-to-moment stuff. But I'm told that once you get the whole crew together and it does, come together for the big finale, the last few hours of it absolutely rule, but you got to get to it. So I'll see how I go. But yeah, so far, I'm not going to say you should absolutely go out and pick this one up. It is pretty mid overall, as I said, but it's got something there. There is charm. It's got the Star Wars vibes down to a T. And yeah, I'm definitely curious to see how it shapes up in that regard. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because vibe is probably the hardest thing about Star Wars to really nail. Because it's very easy to put a lightsaber in something. It's very easy to put a blaster in something. Like you can get those sound effects, but like that doesn't mean that it's gonna have. I'm gonna crack open a SAT word for you guys. Verisimilitude. And that's the it factor. That's the special sauce. That's the chemical X if you're a Powerpuff Girls fan. But I think it's so funny when you see there's so many Star Wars games. We were talking about how they kind of run the gamut on their level of quality. I think that is something that typically differentiates like the fan favorite or like cult hit Star Wars games from the others. It's either like they provide something where it's like with Dark Forces, it's like, this is basically just you skinned Star Wars over Doom, which like
straight up,
that's a winning formula anyway, because Doom is great. And like, particularly if you're a young me and like, I don't like the demon, like iconography and stuff like that, but I love Star Wars. So if you wanted to get me into a first-person shooter, Dark Forces is the way you do it. Like that is literally just the way that you get me in. And I think it's funny when like they go that way and then they go to the entirely other thing where it's like, wow, we really nailed this tone, but like the game kind of isn't great, But
yeah, and like I know Massive can do better because like the Division games were, functionally better. They were much better shooters, and I don't know if it's just the fact that they're blasters, like they don't have the same kind of tactile feel as like an actual kinetic rifle or anything like that. But something about it just feels like very light and airy and doesn't quite land.
that's a
But
shame.
I mean, but in my case, like I'm doing the stealth thing anyway, so more often than not, I'm not trying to get into, a fight. And when I do, it's just a very quick stun shot because I fucked up, and that'll do.
Well, but how much of that is a side effect, or like a knock-on effect of the fact that like the combat is not great? Like how much
That's
is
at least part of it.
How much is you playing stealth because you like stealth, and how much of it is you're playing stealth because it doesn't really feel good to do other things?
Little of both, but I will give it credit in that their level design is really good, and there are usually, like, it's not quite, full immersive sim or whatever, but there's usually different ways to get around to your objective in like each complex. And there are a few other little things I like, whereas every location will have, a treasure chest, a big container that's, you get map completion if you clear it. But more often than not, rather than just appearing on your map or doing anything like that, you have to get intel for it by either talking to people or listening in on conversations in cantinas or, hacking terminals or whatever that'll point you in the general direction of things. And so a lot of your little map markers and such are very generalized stuff that you have to pick up by being part of the world and immersing yourself in it. And I really like that. That part is, again, helps to the atmosphere of it. Like, you know, when you're going through you literally go through the Mos Eisley Cantina from A New Hope. And there's a few, like, they do go into a couple of recognizable locations and such. They can't help themselves. But they do a really great job of it, and it does feel really cool to just kind of be there and, you know, listen into a conversation where they're talking about a heist that went bad and where they had to leave their stuff. And so you go there and you dig around, and you're like, yep, there's this old stuff. But then as a result, you find a data pad which says, yeah, so we were going into this one base over here. We think it's in, you know, we think their armory is in like the back corner of this place. And so you get a little intel marker on, you know, here is this Imperial facility. There might be a container in there if you want to check that out. It kind of has a knock-on effect like that, but it's just a kind of, it flows organically from being part of the world and talking to people and listening in and vibing with it. So I do like that part, at least.
Yeah, that sounds good. I dig it.
But yeah,
I've actually been eyeing that because I saw a couple of like posts where it's just like, oh yeah, this game just got like a huge discount after I got a huge patch that was supposed to like improve a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and it also came out on Steam because it was like Ubisoft exclusive up until that, because they're still trying that shit. And I don't think that went well for them, so here it is on Steam, and that's when I picked it up.
Yeah. Didn't they also like swap creative director or something like that recently? And like some really weird timing. I forget.
They might have. I'm not sure. I don't tend to keep, like, Ubisoft is in like all sorts of trouble at the moment in terms of, it looks like they're trying desperately to get themselves sold off to like Tencent or whatever, but I don't know if it's panning out for them. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah. A lot of ups and downs over the years at Ubisoft.
It is. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy.
I mean, it doesn't help that they just kind of homogenized everything. It's like you had all these different interesting franchises under the Ubisoft banner, and now you can't tell them apart. They're all, like, every game you get is an Ubisoft game. It doesn't matter if it's Assassin's Creed or Far Cry or whatever. The only exception of recent memory is Prince of Persia: The Last Crown.
Yeah, I was going to say. And the Rogue
Prince Prince of Persia, yeah. Prince of Persia, after, you know, being in a slump for forever, just kind of came back kicking. And that's another one I need to get on from this year. But
yeah, I was going to say, that is one where it's like, oh yeah, I'm, you know, we can talk all day about how Ubisoft is like creatively bankrupt, and I'm like, yeah, but a big part of that is the fact that you guys stopped making Prince of Persia games. Like, those games are awesome, and they don't, like, when like the Sands of Time trilogy, like, that doesn't feel like anything else that exists anymore. Like,
yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, but anyways.
But yeah, that's Star Wars Outlaws. I will get back to you on whether or not the ending is worth all that time, if I get to it. But overall, I'm having a mid time of it.
Nice. I mean, it's not nice that you're having a mid time, but it's nice that you're. Well, I mean, let's be honest. A mid time is still better than you could get in a lot of games.
I mean, it grabbed my attention and kept me there. Like, other games I bounced off for a few hours, you know, after a couple of hours, or like, I'll put down for a bit. But again, like, I was shocked to look at it and go, oh, 28 hours in like a week? Damn, must be doing something right.
Something's more interesting than the Avatar game they kind of shut out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
speak of the Ubisoft game, that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like this is actually a pretty great segue. I've been playing. Oh, excuse me. I've been playing more of Dragon Age, the Veilguard.
Do tell.
And so I'm like, I think I'm like. Let me see real quick. Yeah, I'm like 15 hours in now. And I gotta say, like, this game is pulling me through, which is crazy because I fell off of Metaphor. Like, maybe it is just like and I'm gonna go back to Metaphor for sure, but like,
I like Metaphor. It's just too damn long.
I am really enjoying Dragon Age. Like, I am having so much fun with this game. You know, I have heard people say that, like, the combat gets boring or falls off. I think Kris, maybe you had told me that you had heard people say that.
This is what I'd heard, yeah.
But yeah, like I'm getting, more synergy with my characters. I think every character that exists in the party except for one, but I'm on the mission to get that one. So like they're kind of a temporary, kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics. Like you'd have like the guest character, and then like after the mission, they might join you or something. So I'm on that mission right now. And it's cool. Like each character has, I don't know if did I get into the character skill trees?
No, you didn't.
Okay, so there's like a kind of a sphere grid from like Final Fantasy X for your main character.
You did mention that there was a sphere grid.
Yeah, where you can go and like there will be different zones. Like it's not like in Final Fantasy X, there were different parts of the sphere grid where each of your characters started, and so they would focus on different things that they were good at. In this game, in Dragon Age: The Veilguard, you start in the middle, and then if you go, so I'm a mage. So if you go up on the map, it goes into like your ice/control spells. If you go to the upper left, you'll get towards your like necromancy, like corpse explosion, undead abilities. If you go, another way, you'll get like more fire abilities, stuff like that. So you can decide what you want to do. And it's cool because on the fringes of each of these areas, like they just fluidly move into each other, but you'll get stuff that kind of caters to both. So like I went up first and got some ice and control spells. And then I went left to get the necromancy stuff because my character, one of the origins that I chose for my character is he's a member of the Morn Watch, which is they watch over like the oh my god, the necromantic like ziggurat whatever in Dragon Age. So he kind of resides and does necromancy and that sort of stuff in that area, and then something happened with like an undead uprising. He did some stuff that was kind of frowned upon, and now he's kind of like, I'm just gonna take a breather and go adventure around and see what's going on. And then he happens upon like the setting of the story and all that sort of stuff. So like he has that background, which comes up in dialogue, which I thought was really cool. I ran into a character that's from the place my character is from, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I heard, didn't you do that thing?" And he was like, "Yeah, we don't need to talk about that right now." And it was like, it was good. Like it was fun. I feel like while the dialogue just in and of itself is like, it works perfectly fine. It serves the purpose. It's not like award worthy or anything like that, but that is one area where like, I feel like they did a good job. Like incorporating,
so integrating your choices in character creation into it.
Because that was a big thing in Dragon Age Origins, the first game. But it didn't really,
right there in the name.
It didn't really pop up hardly at all. Like you'd have like your unique intro, which is not how this game works. But like people really didn't comment on your background that much. And here it feels like it comes up from time to time, like in ways that feel very organic and natural. And that is adding to the kind of immersion of the game, which I like. I like it a lot. I heard somebody say, obviously this game, I believe the director of the game is trans, and so there's the scuttlebutt from idiots around the internet about like,
oh boy,
all that sort of stuff. But one thing that I heard, a descriptor that I heard somebody say was, it sounds like every line of dialogue was written with HR in the room, which I think is legitimately pretty funny, but it doesn't really feel true. What it feels to me is like, it feels to me like this is a Dragon Age game for a broader audience than like your typical fantasy fiction nerds. A lot of times in these sorts of games, you'll get, even in Destiny, like you get into the Codex in Destiny, and it's like, this is the story of the last person who owned this gun. And it's like a little short story, and it's fascinating, but it gets into, they get into the idea of like Thanatonauts who are, people when they wake up in Destiny, they've lost all of their memories. And sometimes when you die and come back to life, you'll get a little bit of those memories that come back to you. So the Thanatonauts kill themselves over and over again to try to piece together what happened, not only in their lives, but in ancient human history that's been lost. That is a fascinating idea. That is such a cool idea. And like, I feel like a lot of the best fantasy does that. And I feel like the previous games did that more, like even Inquisition, which I definitely had issues with.
I have the perfect analogy for you right here.
Oh, yeah?
This is a Skyrim when we came off Morrowind.
Well, yeah, I haven't played Morrowind yet, but I'll trust you on that one. I'll trust you on that one. Yeah. But yeah, it feels like it is it's catering to the mean, It's looking at the I wouldn't even say it's a blue ocean strategy because it's I don't think it is. I just feel like it doesn't well, I don't even know if that's fair for me to say. I was going to say it doesn't really lean into the stuff that made me like the series, the stuff that I think makes Dragon Age as a franchise legitimately very interesting. Because there are some things that stick out about this series, like the existence of lyrium, the fade, like all that, like, when you dream, you go to this other place that really exists. And some creatures or like people groups cannot go there. Like dwarves don't dream. So there's a thing.
They don't dream. They can't magic. Yeah.
They can't do magic and they don't have dreams, which is sick. Like that is so interesting to tie like dreams and magic together and have people who just can't do anything with that. At the beginning of the game.
And that's why Solus is the best character, because he dives into that shit in Inquisition and he is. Yes, keep talking to me.
Solus is the best character, which is why Veilguard has me so conflicted, because it is centered around a group that is opposed to Solus. And when I played the Inquisitor, Solus was like my right-hand dude. And like, we really understood each other. And so, all the times when like, there have been times in this game when I've been like yelling at the screen, because it's like, Solus will say something and like, my character will have 3 different ways of saying, I don't believe you, or I don't trust you, or something like that. And I'm like C-3PO busted up on the back of Chewbacca, like, what are you doing? Trust him. I'm only trying to help, Oh yeah, of course, we knew you didn't have any choice. And it's like, just listen to him, But I know Solus, they don't know Solus, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so it does center on him, and it does get into like elven gods and the Fade, and like that is central to this. But it means that a lot of the central plot stuff that doesn't really get dug into too deeply. I mean, they just because it's like it's always at the fore. So like you don't really get into like the nitty gritty and talking about the history of these sorts of things that much, at least like 14-ish, 15-ish hours in. I did encounter like some memory that was a cool sequence. So maybe I'll find more of those. But as it stands, like the kind of the side quest stuff where I would normally find a lot of the, diving into the like specific history of these type of groups. Like, oh, let's talk about the Antivan Crows. Let's talk about Minrathous. Let's talk about something like that. Like they don't really have that sort of like meat to them.
Right.
And so that feels like it's missing. But what you get with the kind of like the new combat system, the ability to, because like you don't control your party members at all. Like they just fight on their own. You can you can be like, attack this person, but it's just with like, you'll pull up like a wheel and it'll have like one of your party members, like 3 abilities that you made shortcuts for over here. And then the other person. It's
closer to Mass Effect than where in previous games you could potentially jump between each party member.
Yes, it is a lot like Mass Effect. And I think it's tough because like in the older games, you could switch to another party member and it would be like, okay, I don't want to play a mage. I'm sick of holding this button down and just shooting my magic balls all over the place. Well, they don't do that anymore because now you have bespoke button presses for every time you use something, and you have charged versions of them you can do, and you'll bounce back and forth between like your square and triangle buttons to do different combos and things. And you can unlock new combos through like your skill tree and things. But if I got tired with playing a mage and I didn't want to switch to like my other weapon set, which is really easy, you just hit down on the D-pad and it switches between like your staff move set and your like dagger and focus, which is like almost like a yo-yo. It's like a magical yo-yo where you just like fling it out and tag people. Which that rhythm is like
previously, so I guess it's now got a string attached.
Well, I mean, it is a ball. It's not really yo-yo, but like it goes out and then it comes back to you, that sort of thing. You're telekinetically flinging it around and dinging people. It's fun. Like I like it. And I like the fact that like, as I get a more powerful staff or as I get a more powerful like orb, and I'm pondering my orb, I'll switch back and do like one of those more often. Or if I'm fighting certain types of enemies, like if the enemy is faster or further away, like I'll change which weapons I'm doing. But I have no idea what a warrior feels like. I have no idea what a rogue feels like in this universe because I'm not playing one and I don't really have an option to play one. So that is a little weird, but overall, like the thing that just keeps happening is I keep being like, I could really go for some Dragon Age right now. And it runs well. It runs really well on my Steam Deck. It doesn't look great. I have not found a way to make it look great and run well. But I've also like streamed it to my Steam Deck from my like desktop, and the way that it looks when it's on my desktop is like night and day. It is crazy. Like the hair technology in this game when you're playing it on a really good computer is nuts. Like it's some of the best hair I've seen. Like it's just awesome. Anyways, that's like I've talked a lot and I've said a lot, but like I mean, I continue to be really impressed. And it's not like this is going to be my game of the year or anything, unless it like really pulls some cool shit out at the end, which it could. I mean, Solus is in this game. There's possibility. There's possibility that it could be hype. I don't know, but I am definitely going to keep playing it. It's probably going to be the next game that I finish. Yeah, I don't know what to say other than this game rules. I love it. It's so fun.
I'm glad you like it because I have been hesitant about it for reasons that we discussed last week. So we'll see.
And it's interesting because this is one of those games where it's like I can't give it a full-throated endorsement because I do feel like it's missing some key things that I love about Dragon Age and that I love about BioWare RPGs when they are at their best. But I will also say that it is definitely quite good. And I feel like this is one of those things where like there's a saying that I really love, which is Dark Souls finds your weakness, because sometimes you'll be like, man, that was a really easy boss fight. And then you'll talk to your friend and you're like, are you kidding me? I was on that boss fight for like 5 hours. And another one that they thought was really easy. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to tear my hair out. Like those games find what is hard for you and they put you through your paces, and everybody, your cash spends differently. I feel like for Dragon Age the Veilguard, it is really going to matter how much these different aspects of a RPG matter to you, how important they are to you, and how flexible you are in what is fun for you. But I will say, don't turn your nose up at this because I still think it's pretty good. So, yeah,
fair enough.
I don't know. And I think it's on sale right now. Like I think it's like $45 right now.
Nice.
Which is cool.
I've got enough other things to get through, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I was just saying because I was just inundated with deals. When Tekken 8 was like $30, and I'm like, people buy Tekken 8, come on. But yeah, it's good. It's good. I don't know if you guys have any other questions. I know I was talking for a long time.
I say Dragon Age has always felt to me like the victim of circumstance in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
extremely.
Yeah. I remember the first one just kind of came out of nowhere, and I really enjoyed it. And then I got the second one super hyped up and just didn't like it at all.
God, what was the name of your boss, Grey Warden, in the first one?
Duncan.
Duncan. Dude, that dude ruled. Yeah. That guy like made that game so good.
Yeah, and then like the third one came out, and it was another like a lot of like really big shifts. And everyone likes to blame EA, but really I think it's just a whole lot of things happening in video games every time BioWare tried to make a new one.
Yeah. It's like the thing that happens with Horizon, except instead of being a specific day, it's like industry trends.
Yeah. And even this one, apparently it was going to be more servicey, but then they like yanked out
they
all
it years ago.
Yeah. Thank Christ it isn't, because that would make this miserable.
Mm-hmm. And apparently there's like, if you kind of squint at it, you can kind of see where they like scrubbed that stuff out. But I can't speak to it. I just thought it was kind of interesting thing for some
probably in the level design regard. That seems to be the one where people point to.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would say I could see it in the way that equipment works, but I actually think that this is like a way friendlier way to do equipment than most other RPGs do. Because like I straight up just picked up something. I'm using this like uncommon weapon, and I've gotten like a couple of different ones, and then I picked up I opened a chest, and it just said upgrade. And it took the weapon that I already had and just increased the rarity of it and just made it better.
Now, that is live service, yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, how many times have you had weapons in games where like they just suck after a while and then you just sell them or throw them away? And like now it's like, well, it's keeping this weapon relevant, which is great. Like that's something you don't really see that often. Like happening automatically. It's like, oh, you have to go take this.
Definitely not automatically. You usually have to use a currency, there's usually like a crafting
go
system,
upgrade it. And it's like, you can do that too, but it's like, you might just find some shit and it just makes your sword like a way better sword.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
And like saying it's a victim of circumstance, I think it alludes to like, I feel like a lot of these games have been very divisive. But at the same time, like, people always show up for them. They always seem to do really well. So even if like the core audience hasn't really been able to like settle for these games, there is something about them that manages to like hang on to, appealing to a lot of people anyways, even if it's like different reasons for each one. So it's interesting to see, like, especially compared to like Mass Effect, where that's kind of more of a straight line. I feel like Sea Dragon Age kind of maintain its like name value despite all the like differences and changes and discourse and arguments and stuff. It's neat.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because in some ways I feel like Dragon Age and Mass Effect are like two totally different. It's like if you took two twins and like you fed one of them like all natural food and the other one just ate junk food all the time. It's just like, oh, what was this? And that's like a super dramatic way to put it. But I'm just thinking like,
it makes sense.
Mass Effect was really
Mass
good.
Effect is the junk food one.
Well, the thing is like, or I guess more specifically, it would be like, what if you kept one of your kids inside all the time, and then when they got out of high school and went to college, they went out to a public college, and then your other kid, it's like you just let run out in the wilds and eat dirt and play with stuff, and then when they went to school, it's like the compare and contrast, because from the very beginning, like even Dragon Age 1 to Dragon Age 2, those games are very different. And then Inquisition is very different from 2. And then Veilguard is pretty different from Inquisition. So it's like they were always kind of changing. Mass Effect was mostly the same. And then like they finished
but even then it's not, because 1 and 2
yeah, 1 and 2 yeah, but like then 2 and 3 are like very similar and both beloved.
But part
one
of,
more than the
again,
other.
and part of that is because Mass Effect 3 was developed in like 18 months.
Yeah.
They didn't have time.
And then
the same again with Dragon Age 2, 18-month development. You can tell a pattern here.
Yeah,
also,
but
like,
you don't have time to find a new audience because people were in for the trilogy, and then you get Andromeda, which is different, and people are just like, nope, we're out. Whereas like every
Also,
version
just
of Dragon
very
Age has
middling
been
quality.
different. The thing that's been consistent is the setting, which like we were talking about earlier with Star Wars, is like there are
that's a good point.
really cool things about the Dragon Age, about Thedas. Like we were talking about Lyrium, we were talking about the dwarves, we were talking about the Darkspawn and the Archdragon. You know, like there's a lot of cool shit in this thing. You know, there's a whole scene in Inquisition where they describe like the ancient Tevinter Imperium like breaking into heaven. And like,
literally that scene where Corypheus is introduced and he's just, you know,
I looked at the throne.
I strode
of God.
into the Black City
Yeah.
and found it empty.
Yeah.
It's like, damn.
I saw the throne of God and it was empty. And it was just like, what? Like there's cool shit here. And I feel like that, at least for me, is the reason why I keep showing up to these. Is because
a combination of that and pretty cool characters.
It's a very rich setting, and you can do a lot with it. You know, it's got almost like a Forgotten Realms kind of quality, where it's just like you could kind of do whatever in this setting.
Yeah,
you know, you could do a political thriller.
Funny you bring up the Forgotten Realms, because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
They got sick of dealing with the license on Baldur's Gate, so they went and did their own thing.
Which I respect. If you've got good ideas, then do it, you know?
And they do.
You don't need to be beholden to that. Yeah, it's very, very cool. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. That's my 2 cents on that. But
I have started and fallen off Inquisition 3 or 4 times for various reasons. It's usually not even the game's fault, because I don't think I've gotten far enough into it to like have a solid opinion.
Yeah.
But like I really loved the first Dragon Age.
Yeah.
And I really didn't like the second one, but I still want to see it through.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, now there's another one. The runway is a lot longer now all of a sudden. Shit. But
well, I mean, we were talking about this. You were not on the last episode. It was just me, Kris, and Will, right?
Yeah.
I've missed a few weeks again.
Yeah. So I was talking about, I mean, I'm not trying to like gotcha you with something. I was just saying, I mentioned it last time. Dragon Age the Veilguard is like half the length of Inquisition. It's like 24 hours or something.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, like full completion.
Inquisition felt huge.
It is. Inquisition is massive.
Inquisition is massive, and a lot of it is filler. So
yeah.
But what is there is cool. Like there is some interesting stuff that they do in that game that
the main missions and general like characters and conversations and such, really cool. I like Inquisition. It's just you got to wade through some shit to get there.
Yeah, it has some of my favorite moments in the whole series in that game.
Same.
Yeah, it didn't immediately like make me cringe like Dragon Age 2 did.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If I had to miss one Dragon Age, I'm glad it was 2. You know.
And again, I went back to it this year and was just like, man, there's some good stuff here, but it's bad.
Yeah.
Some people love it though.
And I get why. That's the thing. Yeah. There is enough there to defend. They're always defending it because of what is good compared to what is bad. And I get that. I completely get that. I just can't ignore the bad, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's enough time spent on Dragon Age, unless you guys have anything super pressing that I can't get to later with my full thoughts. But who wants to take it next?
I think it's my turn.
All right.
We talked about Night Dive earlier and their whole preservation thing. So now it's time to talk about Digital Eclipse, which is like the other pillar, and I think like probably like one of the most impactful studios in like preservation in a long time. Mostly because of Frank Cifaldi and those Mega Man games. So Digital Eclipse in its current form has been experimenting more with what it does, and one of the results of that has been the Gold Master series. And I have not played either of those, but I did play Tetris Forever, and it was really interesting. One, because this is the first time I've actually like dove into and checked out this format. 2, I think Tetris is very good for that format. And then 3, the response to it has been really interesting. So to rewind a little bit, Goldmaster is basically a interactive documentary. It's very filmic and like its structure and how it's kind of presents itself as like a story. Basically, you get different chapters and there's a map, and you go down it, and there's video clips, and there's text you can read, and then there's interactive parts. What Tetris Forever basically does is it tries to tell a more complete version of the Tetris story from beginning to current. The Tetris story, I think a lot of people have heard at this point in various formats, just because there's like other documentaries, there's like YouTube stuff, there's a very good like comic book sort of retelling of it by Box Brown. There's a very silly dramatized movie that came out fairly recently, but it's pretty well known as far as like the major bullet points of like Tetris, where it's like, oh, the guy in Russia made it, and there was a weird stuff that happened with the rights, and then it turned into a huge thing. So Tetris Forever really focuses, like it does retell that story, but it really focuses on the other major player behind the company now, Hank Rogers. I hope I said his name right. Who runs? Well, I think his daughter's in charge now, but basically, like Tetris is its own company right now, and it's
It's like
that
Tetris.
guy.
It's like Tetris Holdings LLC or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But it's like that guy, his daughter, and then like the original creator of Tetris, who I don't think he's like an employee or anything like that, but he's basically is like, he's the dude, so he can just like hang
Alexei
out
Pajitnov.
and do it. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for knowing that, because I wasn't even going to try. I forgot to like
You're
pull
welcome.
things up.
You're welcome. I got you.
Thank you so much. So, right off the bat, I think one of the coolest things about this is that you can play the original Tetris, or at least a version of it that is like as close as you can get to playing that without having that old computer that it was made on, which they have footage of, like a replica of it in the documentary. It's really cool. So it's a big collection of Tetris games, but it's not like a definitive collection. It's not like the Mega Man things where it's like, here's everything. It's like a bunch of versions of Tetris and Tetris adjacent games that are like in service to the story being told. So you have a lot of like the early PC versions. So you've got like, the one that the guy made. Then you have like the port to slightly better computers that like a teenager coded for this guy. Then you've got like the early PC versions when all the rights stuff was happening. So like MS-DOS, and like when the games had that really heavy like Russian branding and everything. And then you go to like Japan, where this Rogers guy comes in. And so you've got like the original Famicom version of Tetris. You've got some like spin-offs. Then you've got like all the different, there were a bunch of like Super Nintendo Tetrises, all the stuff that was kind of going on before and after Nintendo got involved. And then it kind of cuts off there. You get like some of the post Tetris, like other things that you said Alexei was his name.
Yeah.
So like Hatris is one of them, and then it kind of like cuts off before you get to like what like stuff you can still get now, or stuff that was like on Xbox or whatever. So like once you kind of transition into the Tetris company, they're kind of like, well, now you can like buy our shit, so fuck you, we're gonna cut you off.
You are not getting a copy of Puyo Puyo Tetris.
Yeah, you're not getting Tetris Effect. We'll talk about Tetris Effect, but you can go buy that separately if you want it. But they still like, they bring in people and interview footage to talk about it, and they still like, even if like they don't get the license to the Nintendo or the Sega versions or like the Arica arcade versions, they still like incorporate that stuff into the story of Tetris to make sure they cover important details. So it's kind of ends up being like, yes, it's like a broad level of like Tetris from beginning to end, but it's also like sort of the background of what we know as Tetris now, where it's like it started in Russia, and then there was like a kerfuffle over the rights. This one guy finally, like through his dealings and then being aggressive and kind of scrappy, this guy who's like not Japanese but runs a developer publisher in Japan, who's like started basically making like a weird wizardry type game before tripping over Tetris at a like a junket event, something or other.
Next thing you're gonna tell me is like that's how you got into this. It's like, oh, I heard somebody was trying to make a wizardry game. Oh,
No,
I'm
I
glad you
damn
said
it.
it because I was thinking of saying it.
I got baited and switched, and now it's just a Tetris game. Come on.
now we're gonna
guys.
talk about the Black Onyx, motherfucker. No, but I was like, oh damn, I should look this game up. And surprise, surprise, it's not easy to get a hold of, or in English, I don't think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's like he gets a hold of Tetris, and he's gone through some crazy stuff. Like he talks about meeting the guy who ran Nintendo at the time, and it just makes him sound like this really intense dude. And it was like he didn't want to have anything to do with this guy until he was like, "Hey, you play Go, I play Go, let's play Go," and they build a relationship over that almost implodes because there's this whole thing where like he makes the first Famicom version of Go, and he gets like this huge advance from Nintendo, and then shows him the game, and he absolutely hates it. He's like, "This is garbage. What is this?" And the deal goes sour, but he already spent the money, so now he has to like kind of maneuver with how he's selling it and give Nintendo royalties, and it's a whole mess. But he gets Tetris on the Famicom, and it's like a failure at first. Then it finally latches on, and it's a huge deal in Japan. And
to this day,
yeah, and
that's
then
still
Nintendo
the
gets
version
involved.
that a lot of people do their speedruns and shit on. So
Yeah. Well, it's funny because this is before. So the Nintendo version is the one that people do the speedruns and stuff, but there was a earlier Famicom version which has like way different controls and mechanics and stuff. It was really weird. I had no idea. But that kind of like builds up to Nintendo being like, "Oh, we want to get in on this. We want to publish this now," and that's when it blows up everywhere. But then it's like, okay, well, what happens after that? And it's like, oh, well, here's these guys over here, and Bulletproof Software is the name of the company at the time. And they're like, well, we're going to do some like Super Nintendo versions and find other different ways to kind of, we're going to come up with new modes, and we're going to do a multiplayer version, which is amazing. I love Tetris Battle Guide, and it's so cool. And it's awesome to have like
whoever figured out the battle mode on Tetris, like shout outs to you. That shit is great.
Yeah, it's so good. And it leads to Tetris DS, which is such an amazing game.
Tetris DS is a great freaking game.
So good. But like, it's like they made Tetris on consoles. Nintendo made it big, and then it's like, okay, now what? This guy like seems to really just believe in Tetris just being like an amazing, awesome video game,
which it is.
Yeah, but like, what do you do? And it's like, well, we keep making Tetris games. We try and do other things, and then it's like that results in Alexei finally getting paid for it. He didn't have the rights to Tetris until like 1995 or something ridiculous like that.
Crazy.
Yeah, but it tells a story of it's like the guy gets the rights to Tetris, makes it into a big thing, but then he goes back and like gets his homie back out of Russia and still like make sure he gets taken care of when it's like legally possible.
Shout outs to him for that.
Yeah, and then Tetris becomes its own company, no longer beholden to publishers, is able to sustain itself like that, and become even more of a multifaceted thing. And it's interesting because like when you think about playing Tetris and like what are good versions of Tetris, almost nothing in this collection is like what would come to mind. Like none of these are like the versions of Tetris you would want to play like now. Obviously like the Nintendo ones are on there for obvious reasons. All the like really cool modern ones aren't on there. It's like a bunch of weird ones no one ever really talks about, but are like integral to Tetris, like surviving and eventually thriving. So it's interesting to kind of have the compromise kind of baked into it. Whether or not that was intentional or just kind of where it ended up because of licensing, it's hard to tell. But that's kind of what I got out of it in terms of like finding the hook, so to speak. And that's where I've seen a lot of criticism come in, where a few people and critics in the space have really like jumped on this, being like, oh, well, it doesn't include like, the arcade games that were so instrumental to like the mechanics being where they are, or it doesn't include the Nintendo ones, and that's the most important one. Why wouldn't it be in there?
Yeah, that or the Game Boy one where,
Yeah. And it's like, well, those, like, you already know about those. You don't need this to tell you about Tetris on the Game Boy. You don't need it to be
you also don't
playable.
need this to access them.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, right before we started recording, Nintendo announced NES Tetris is coming to Nintendo Switch Online in like 2 weeks or something. But Tetris on Game Boy was already on it. And then Tetris on Game Boy has been re-released so many times, or some version of it. Like the Grandmaster games, you can buy those on Switch for like $5 each. The Sega one's more of a footnote, really. So that's like, I guess, a more notable omission, but they still talk about it in the footage in a way that like services its, importance on the timeline and everything. So it's like, for me personally, I feel like I got more value out of this as like a documentary experience, telling me about things I didn't know about already. And so like finding a way to like tell a story out of that, without just leaning on the big obvious stuff. So it's like, I kind of understand it from the standpoint of like, if you're looking at it as like, oh, this is the Tetris collection, this is like, if you want, Tetris, as far as like it being like the quintessential Tetris-ness of it, then yeah, it's weird that the NES version is not there. But I think they did a really good job working around that and still, telling an interesting story. That's kind of where I landed on it, for the most part. But there is a part where it kind of falls off, and that's where they, after the documentary, or if you choose not to engage with it, which, why did you even show up? There is a new version of Tetris, called Tetris Time Warp, and it's something Digital Eclipse put together, I guess, to kind of like have something new, and it's just not very good. It's modern Tetris, but then every now and then it'll trigger a time warp, and it'll go to like either Super Bombliss, which is one of the big spin-offs that company was publishing back in the day, or like a sort of version of Game Boy Tetris, kind of, at least it looks like it and kind of sounds like it, or I forget what the third one is, but it'll leave the board and go into the older version of Tetris, and it'll be like, you have 2 minutes to get 2 lines, or to explode a big bomb or whatever, and it'll be like puzzle mode Tetris, where it's like sort of blocks in the screen but with like gaps, and it's so like it's asking you to like quickly adapt to like do some lines or whatever. And that's kind of all it does. So it like almost acts like it's doing like a WarioWare kind of thing, except it's like just the one thing, and it just does that over and over again. It's like, okay, I get it, I guess.
Play it once, experience the gimmick, and go, cool, move on.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't change, and it's like part of it's because it's
as cool a gimmick as like Tetris Effect or anything, which was a very cool gimmick.
Exactly. And it just kind of has the basic modes to it, so it's like you're doing an endless run, and so that just kind of repeats over and over. And it's like an easier version of Tetris in a way. So I had realized when I was playing this that I had been playing the same endless run for like 45 minutes, and just it wasn't getting any harder. It was like, oh, well, I guess I'll just quit now. So that's kind of a bummer. But it's interesting to see we talk about game preservation and everything, but we usually talk about it in the context of like a classic game.
The games themselves, being available. Yeah, not necessarily the story about the development of the game and all its various iterations, which is neat. I think it's cool.
Yeah, exactly. It stands out by being compromised in a way, because it's not if you just want to play Tetris and have a good time, you're not gonna pop in Tetris Forever. You're just not. But it's also like the only way you can play some of these very specific versions of Tetris, and it's got a bunch of context built in a way that it's almost like it's a movie you buy and put in your shelf, and maybe you rewatch it, maybe you don't. Like people used to do that kind of thing. It's like an interesting documentary would come out, and people would buy it, and they probably watch it once, maybe twice, and that'd be it. But it's like
it's on the shelf as part of the collection. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a fulfilling thing to experience and have. And that's kind of where I came away from it. And just to the credit of the format, like, yeah, I never would play like random MS-DOS Tetris on purpose, but it was cool to have like the documentary go and then stop and be like, here, play this for however long you want to play it, and then snap right back into the documentary. It's like, oh, cool. Now I can say I've experienced firsthand these versions of Tetris. If I had heard about them before, I'd only ever heard about them very briefly. So I think it's a very interesting format, and it definitely has me curious to like go back and see the other ones. Because like the first one's like Karateka or something like that.
I honestly don't know. I know there were two others, but I don't know what they are. So,
and the second one's about Jeff Minter. So they're very, very different kinds of subjects, but it's a really neat formula. And yeah, I think that like, while I do understand the criticisms, I think they're also
missing the point.
Missing the forest for the trees a little bit. Because like, yeah, it doesn't have the most impactful versions of Tetris, but it doesn't act like they don't exist either. It still is able to talk about them. There's still footage of them. There's still context of things like the tournaments that happen every year, and the like kill screen or whatever that kid finally got, or how Tetris on Sega Tetris introduced mechanics that are now part of the like universal Tetris Bible or whatever they call it.
Yeah, the hold mechanic and such.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is really, really important nowadays.
And like the thing where like you can spin it for a little bit before it like fully commits the piece, even when it's down.
Yeah.
So that stuff's in there and it's talked about. I feel like some of the stuff I read almost acted like it wasn't at all, which is kind of weird. And there's like another angle of like, oh, well, if it's just glazing up this guy who owns the Tetris company the whole time. And it's like, well, yeah, but also it's not really like making stuff up. It's not really
kind of
misrepresenting. It's like, you're kind of like, oh, it's making him look like a hero and a really good guy, but it's like he is also kind of like getting through these rights scrambles by like giving deals that weren't just blatantly ripping off the goofy Russian people, or like not taking credit away. Like the story of Bombless was like this guy made basically he ripped off Tetris but put a unique mechanic in it, and he was trying to get it published, and he was like, well, we couldn't let that happen, and we could have just like taken it, but instead I made a deal with him, and like I gave him a cut, and it's like stuff like that happens over and over in the story.
It's not nearly as much as a fluff piece of some of the fucking horrible people out there who have had like glow up mockumentaries about.
Yeah, exactly. And then it kind of like goes into like the friendship between these two guys and stuff. I don't know, like the whole time I was really interested in what was happening, and I didn't feel like I was being like advertised at all. And I learned a lot more than I expected to learn, which is like a huge plus for me.
Neat.
So yeah, I think Tetris Forever, if you understand what it is before going into it, I think it's very, very fulfilling to go through at least once. And then just buy Tetris Effect and play that too. Because
I'll put you up Tetris if you want more variety.
Yeah,
because that's my go-to on Switch. So.
Oh yeah, yeah, that is Tetris Forever.
Good
Neat.
Stuff. Good stuff.
What is next on the docket, or are we about the time we wrap it up?
I mean, we can wrap. Yeah, I've got a couple of things, but I can talk about them next week. I don't know. Is there anything like really essential that we haven't gotten to? I've gotten to like the most important stuff for me.
I'll just do a quick lightning round of one thing, just because I started playing it yesterday and I'm only like 2 hours in, but it was one of the games I wanted to pick up, because people talked it up and it came out this year and I want to check it out. And that is Tactical Breach Wizards. Have either of you seen or played this?
I have heard of it.
Sounds familiar. I don't think I have more than that for you.
So imagine turn-based squad strategy game, and you are effectively a SWAT team, except you're also wizards, and it's a wizard world. So your guns are magic stars and shit like that. And so you're doing all the breach and clear and such, but you have different gimmicks and powers of the different subcategories of mages and wizards and what have you that will do different things. And then you have very puzzle-like levels where you have to breach in, deal with an objective, get the enemies out quickly. And you have, because your main character is a seer, you have foresight. So you can kind of test your moves ahead of time before you go, that's not good, I'm going to swap that, or, and you get information on what's going to happen. So it allows you to kind of plan your moves carefully and set that up and go with that. And I had heard about this game and I thought it was something closer to an XCOM in which you kind of get like a bunch of different wizard classes and build your squad accordingly. It's not. It's actually more of a narrative game where specific characters with specific tool sets and whatever who just happen to be that. And so there's a lot more cutscenes and dialogue, and a lot of it is quite quippy and very funny. So I wasn't quite expecting that, but so far I'm very intrigued. So I put about 2 hours into it and I really like it so far. And I want to play more of it. So
Nice.
Watch your space.
Nice.
That's cool. So I had Dragon Quest. I think I can kind of cover that quickly. Brian, are you sure you're good to be done, or did you want to bring up? Okay. All right. So this is going back a little further as well. But I played Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. And that is the official title of that game, for better or worse.
It is exactly what it says it is.
Yeah. And I think that kind of colored my experience with it a little bit and my expectations. Obviously I like Dragon Quest. If you're watching the video, you'll probably I might clear up some confusion maybe.
There's a hint or two in the background somewhere.
Yeah.
Certainly
just
not.
a little bit. So a lot of people playing this are playing this game for the first time. Like a lot of the reviews I've seen.
One day I have extra time.
Yeah. Just we're in this moment now with RPGs, especially the Square Enix, where people are like broadening their horizons a little bit more than maybe in the past several years or so, for various reasons. So like the HD2D thing is a big deal because like Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy made a big impact.
Live Alive.
Yeah, Square Enix used that to then dip into its pool of like lesser known games and games that haven't been localized officially before with Live Alive, which is awesome.
Awesome
and then they
game.
kind of like, yeah, super good. Holy crap. So then their next move was like, well, you know, let's do Dragon Quest. And they did Dragon Quest 3. And I get
Which
why.
is like the favorite, basically.
Yeah, it's like the Dragon Quest. Like it's the one. It's the game where that urban legend about Dragon Quest Day came from back in the day. Any person who lives in Japan who knows Dragon Quest and has been around will point to that one as their favorite, probably. So it is like the Dragon Quest game for a lot of people. And for Square Enix especially, because they have remade that fucking game like 5 or 6 times at this point. And that was kind of where I was at.
I played it on the Game Boy Color. That was a remake.
Yeah, exactly. It was like it hit the Famicom, then it hit Game Boy, then it was on Super Famicom. There's a mobile version. There was a version on Switch already. It's kind of just the mobile version, but retooled a little bit. Yeah. I'm pretty sure there's another version of it I left out. This game has been around multiple times. So it's not like, oh, finally they're remaking Dragon Quest 3. It's like, oh, they're remaking Dragon Quest 3. And that's neat, I guess. So I was kind of like I wanted to be excited because I love Dragon Quest. I think it's a really good game. But it was like hard to find that energy for me because it was like, I mean, I've played this game a million times before. And like I kind of have mixed feelings on the HD2D stuff, depending on what game it is. Which like kind of seemed like a dissenting opinion for a while, but then I've seen every now and then someone will come up and be like, oh, I'm not really into this either, for one reason or another. So this game hits and I'm playing it, and it's Dragon Quest 3. It's a very old school turn-based RPG. It's got like party customization, so it's very classic. It's like Final Fantasy 1. It's like Wizardry. You have your main character, and then you make your 3 other people, and they're just there to play a role in the party, and they're not in the story at all. Doesn't matter. The fun is in making your little team and naming them after your friends or whatever, and then just like grinding it out until you save the world or whatever. And it's very nice looking. They didn't do one of the things I was worried about with this engine, where they have like the character sprites that look very like they look like Super Nintendo sprites kind of chopped out and dropped into this space, and then like the environments are like weird hybrids of pixel and 3D that I don't think look very good in certain situations. Instead, it's like more authored, I guess you could say. Like the environments are in 3D and they're fully rendered in 3D. They don't look like, you know, Minecraft with extra bloom and lighting. So I think it looks really nice, and the sprites are big and very detailed, and they look distinct. They don't look like repurposed sprites or anything. Dragon Quest has never really had like a like strong identity in terms of like character sprites ever. So I think it kind of benefits from that. The monsters look amazing. They're like full on Toriyama art, but they're like really animated and really detailed, and they actually make noises in this, which is fun. A big thing Dragon Quest has enjoyed lately has been just really injecting life into all the monsters. Like in 11, they're out doing stuff in the world and doing silly things and like interacting with each other and stuff. It's really great. And in this one, there's just like they're the focal point in combat because you don't see your characters, so it's just like the huge, detailed, colorful, animated sprites. It's awesome. It's still Dragon Quest 3, so it's still mostly the same game I'm familiar with. But there's a couple differences that are interesting. I'll try and get through this quickly. One, it integrates like waypoints, which is like an obvious thing. Like you expect, oh, it's a new game, it's an RPG, it's gonna tell you where to go. And Dragon Quest, especially like the first 3 games, especially 2 and 3, those games are all about like you have to go to every town, talk to every NPC. They're going to give you a hint, and that's going to be your only clue on where to go next. And,
it's really esoteric in the later part of 3 when you get your ship and whatever, and it's like, cool, I have most of the world map. Good fucking luck.
Exactly. It's like if you don't pick up on the hint you're supposed to find, you might be sailing around for a while, and it's random encounters, so you're going to have to remember where you're going and constantly reorient yourself after a fight. And then God help you if you take a break and don't come right back. If a few weeks go by, you're unless your memory is really good or you took notes or something, you're in trouble. And this, it's like there's waypoints. There's also an interesting feature where if you have a line of dialogue or you look at a sign or something, you can press a button and it'll save that verbatim for you. There's like a little memory bank. So it's like the recall system. It's like there's limited slots, but you can overwrite them, delete stuff. Just anything that seems important in that moment, you can save it and refer back to it later without having to.
That's actually a pretty good idea, honestly.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Game.
Mm-hmm. So I like that. And it's also optional. You can turn waypoints off if you want to go hardcore, but it's like for someone like me who's yeah, exactly. Like I played this before, I did it the hard way before. I like not having to use that much of my brain for finding my way around. It also adds some story stuff, which is like it's whatever. Because like
it was Dragon Quest 3. It was early days in terms of story and such.
Exactly. Like the whole plot is like your dad was a famous adventurer, but he goes out and gets himself killed. Now you were tracing his footsteps. So there's some like extra like flashback sequences and stuff that actually show your dad doing cool stuff.
Very romantic saga 2 kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's cool. There's this whole thing where a lot of older Dragon Quest games, the newer ones, had gambling. Yuji Horii love him some gambling. And gambling's kind of problematic now. So they replaced it with something that's a little different, where it's like you find monsters out in the world and you can recruit them, and then you can go fight them against other monsters in certain arenas as a way to like get more items and stuff. Pretty bare bones. I'm not a huge fan of it.
You have the Dark Prince for monsters right over there.
Yeah, and that game's awesome. This is just a very watered down version of that doesn't really I don't know, it's like it's not as interactive as you would want it to be, so it just kind of is like but the big thing for me is they upgrade the job system to more like what it is in later Dragon Quest games.
Interesting.
Yeah, so in the original Dragon Quest 3, you made your team and they had jobs, and it was like the obvious stuff for the most part. It's like, here's your mage and your warrior and your healer, blah blah blah. Then there's like the one upgrade you can get to sage, and that's like your red mage, and that's like a big deal because you can make one red mage and it's really strong, and that's it. In remakes, they added this like personality thing. So like all your characters will have a personality, and that would be like their stats grow differently in some way. So they really double down on that here. It's like there's more of them. There's a menu where you can like refer to the stat growth and what they mean. There's items you can find to change it. There's equipment that'll change it. So there's a lot of tinkering you can do there. But with vocations, you're not just stuck with what you picked anymore. You can take your character and you can have them go to a different job, and it knocks them down to level 1. But it only cuts their stats in half from where they were when they started over. And you can do this as many times as you want. in true
The infinite grind.
Oh yeah. And like it is in other Dragon Quest games of job systems, it's all cumulative. So it's like if you learn skills as one job, those are permanent. You get to keep those skills. So you can theoretically just make your guys stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until you just are sick of grinding. And I really like the way Dragon Quest games do that. Just because it's fun to kind of either impose your own limits or defy limits as much as you want and just make the most absurd group of characters you possibly could think of.
And tinkering with body builds is always fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's like maybe at a certain point it gets a little silly because it's like you can have a guy that just does everything and that's kind of lame, but that takes an unrealistic amount of grinding. So for me, it's like I still like, all right, I'm going to do this with this guy and this with this guy and this with this guy. And it's just a lot of fun to be like, well, let's see, how much grinding can I stomach? I'll get this guy level 25 before I reset. And that will give me some pretty nice stats if I do that a couple times. And I'll just go through the game with my team of buffed up dudes at whatever class I feel like. And just have a good time feeling like I've been rewarded for the time I put in. So it's nice that they kind of like brought things up to speed in that way.
That's neat.
Yeah. So it's like at the end of the day, it's like it's Dragon Quest 3, which is like the kind of breakthrough game in the series, like the original one, that really put Dragon Quest, I think, on the path to being like the big deal it is internationally. Plus, it's got the shiny new graphics if you're into that. And then it's got some kind of modernization baked in that's not too obtrusive or like, it doesn't really compromise what Dragon Quest 3 is. Not that like is really possible anyway, because it's like one of the most remade games ever. So I kind of came away with it from it being like, well, I wasn't super excited about this, but I sure still did have a really good time. Because it still is the great game it always has been, with some new stuff to play around with, and I commend it for that, and I'm very excited for everyone else who's like, oh my god, this game rules, from people who normally would either turn their nose up at something like Dragon Quest or just ignore it or whatever. So it's kind of cool to see the appetite for such a old school kind of RPG in our era of personas and whatnots. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah.
Well, that's about it from me. You guys good?
Yeah. I played a little bit of Antonblast, which we talked about previously in our PAX preview thing. This is actually, it's been at like a couple of PAXs, and the embargo actually just lifted today for it. But I'll wait until, because Will also got a code for it, because we saw that together during a preview event. I had a lot of fun with it there. TLDR, nothing's changed. It's still super fun, super ridiculous, very shiny, like capital S shiny, like Earthworm Jim shiny. Very much that vibe of a game. You play
cartoony.
Yes. Like it looks like a Saturday morning cartoon game that was made. The devil in this universe is very pink, and he's got a magic mirror, and he asks the magic mirror who is the reddest person of all, and it's not the devil, it's Anton. And so the devil sends his demons to go and steal the thing that is the most important to Anton, which is his booze. And very much like Donkey Kong Country, you have to go out and get it all back. So you have a bunch of really wacky kind of physics that you're dealing with, where you're jumping up and then you're doing a spinning slam with a giant hammer that makes you bounce even higher, that you'll use that to like move around. You can also like roll and kind of like slam through spaces and stuff. And you get to the end, and then you have to escape in a certain amount of time. And there's like kind of like mutant muds like going between the foreground and the background and stuff like that. It's still really fun, but we'll get into that more when Will is on the show. So
this is the one that looks a lot like Wario Land 4, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But when I was talking to the developer, he was like very explicitly inspired by Earthworm Jim. And you can definitely tell. This is going to be a potentially extremely deep cut. It also gives me some kind of vibes of the Crash Test Dummies game on the Game Boy.
I feel like I have played this at some point. Yeah.
Anyways,
that's cool.
There's not that it like has you do that sort of stuff, but it's like that kind of wacky. So yeah. Anyways, we'll talk about it more soon, but I just wanted to kind of like put that out there because that is another thing that I've been getting into. Not as much as I have Veilguard, but yeah, it's fun. And it feels, it's another one of those games where like this feels like a game that could have come out on the Super Nintendo or even the like NES, potentially. But yeah,
that's cool.
It is very of that time, and if you've been looking for something like that, then like, I mean, come on, like, why not?
I haven't really paid a ton of attention to it other than kind of making that visual connection to Wario, and so I was kind of like in my mind had it next to like Pizza Tower.
I mean, so that is, it's so funny that you said that. I was literally just about to say the comparison everybody makes is Pizza Tower because like,
Antonblast. You mentioned Wario, and I think Pizza Tower.
The like Antonblast was in development, and then like Pizza Tower came out, and like people just like, and that was like the thing where it's just like,
but it sounds like sometimes. It sounds like Pizza Tower is more actually like Wario than this, or am I misunderstanding?
I haven't played Pizza Tower actually, so I don't know.
Gotcha.
But But yeah,
I haven't played Antonblast, but probably, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's good. It's good. So I still recommend it. I recommended it after our PAX preview, and full version, I'm playing it on my Steam Deck. It's great. It's really fun.
There's a demo. I downloaded the demo. I've not played it.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, then definitely go play the demo because it's like that is, it's like this is going to show you what it is and tell you whether it's for you. So
sick.
If you are one of the people to whom this appeals, this is one of extremely few games that comes out of a quality bar that will please you. And these games don't really, we're talking about like these old school RPGs. They're being remade more now, but like if you want to play those style of games, like there's not a lot of them like that are being made now. And this is even more true of this sort of a game. Like this is a game of a bygone era that people do not make anymore.
So, the old 2D mascot platformer of sorts.
Yeah. Anyways, check it out. Let's get out of here, guys. Thank you, listeners, viewers, for joining us for episode 332 of the Platformers. If you like the show, leave us a review or tell somebody about it. We love talking to all you guys, so swing by our Twitch chat, twitch.tv/Ribnax, RIBNAX, where we stream mostly on Monday evenings around 7 p.m. Central.
We made it to a Monday again. Hooray.
We did make it. Yeah, we've been delayed the past couple of weeks because one of the hosts has requested a delay so that they could attend and cover something very specific. But yeah, we are back to our normal time and should be for a little bit. I might be off the show next week, but we'll figure that out. And yeah, you should hit me up on social media. You can find me on Blue Sky at Brian Barnett, BrianBarnett. And then you can also find me at Ribnax on Twitter and YouTube, where I put the VODs after we stream. So, Kris, where can everybody find you?
Hey, I am Kris Cornelise. You can find me on most games and around the internet as Delfeir, Delfeir. My website is at versusthebacklog.com. That's vsthebacklog.com. one word. A lot of my old writing and stuff is there, as well as occasional new things. So yeah, check it out. How about you, Lucas?
Yeah, you can find me at Blue Sky as Hokuto Lucas. You cannot find me on Twitter. I don't post there anymore. Don't fucking look me up on Twitter.
Yeah.
I write mostly on shacknews.com. That's where you'll find a review of Infinity Nikki, hopefully very soon. I'm also going to be reviewing Fantasian Neo Dimension, which I can acknowledge I'm playing, and that's it. And maybe something else that there was some weird drama about recently, where I can't tell if it's under embargo or not. But if you saw the drama, you'll know what I'm talking about. That's where I'll go for now. That's very silly because video games always find stupid drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell people that I'm going to be reviewing Indiana Jones for this podcast, and I can tell you that now.
Oh, nice.
Neat.
So yeah, so we'll be doing that, and I'll also have some guides up at Kotaku where you can also find some of my most recent work. If you were anywhere near IGN for the past like week plus, you definitely saw something that I wrote. There's a huge like fanatical sale that's going on where they're selling Steam games discounted even deeper than Steam was discounting them during the autumn sale. So you can get like a bunch of stuff really, really good. I got the Mass Effect Legendary Collection and Sayonara Wild Hearts and What the Golf.
Good game, that.
And Wintermore Tactics Club, all for like $14 total, which was pretty good. So yeah, that's pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff that you can find out there, a lot of deals, including on Metaphor, which we will definitely be talking about, in the coming, I can't even say months now, in the coming month, because it is officially December the 2nd, which means that about a month from now, a month and some change, we're going to be doing our Game of the Year episode.
Oh,
which
God.
is going to be... how are we going to finish all these fucking games we need to talk about? Ugh.
If I don't find the drive to finish, then it clearly can't be the best, can it?
That's true. That's very true. That's very true.
I played 5 hours of Metaphor, and I have no idea how the hell I'm going to play more.
Yeah.
Regardless if I want to or not. It's just like, God.
Yeah. I think I might, just as a little kind of peek behind the curtain, I may have like a divide and conquer style thing where it's just like, all right, what is everybody definitely finishing? And then we can kind of figure out what is important to us that gets talked about or whatever. But yeah, I'm definitely just going to take things as they come. And I'm going to be gone for like a week roundabouts on vacation. So, and I'm going to be busy like all of those days. So yeah, we're going to see what happens. But anyways, from everybody here at the Platformers, we hope you guys have a wonderful week out there and stay safe. Until next time, we are out.
Peace.
Goodbye.